I call the globalized world of the future globalia or globalia. Have you ever heard that word? Now you hear it, remember it, because you will live in globalia. And in order to understand the risks and the opportunities, both are huge, of globalia, you have to understand what is going on. And just a few highlights. How will the world grow until 2030? So roughly in the next 13 to 15 years. Based on more or less generally accepted assumption on the growth rates, China will be by far the biggest contributor. But the US will also be a very big growth factor. Why? Because the starting level is so high. The European Union, a little smaller. If we exclude the UK, it may even be a little smaller than that. And then a big disappointment, the other BRIC countries, Russia, India, Brazil. As you see, they do not contribute as much. Why? Because the starting level is too low. We always look at growth rates without considering the starting level, but that's meaningless. If you grow by 10% from zero, that's still zero. And most of the other countries do not contribute much. How will the world look in 2030? On the vertical axis, the gross domestic product, and on the horizontal axis, the growth. And we see a world which is split into two parts. What I call the first global league, US, European Union, and China. And I showed here the European Union with and without the UK. For the European Union, it does not make such a big difference. For the UK, it makes a quite big difference because you play, as of 2019, in the second global league. My other prediction is around 2030, negotiations for the re-entry of the UK into the European Union will start. So what does this mean? This two-split world. If you want to play a role in globalia, you have to be strong in the first global league. If you are only in one of the second league countries or regions, you will not be a global company. Because about 60% of the global gross domestic product will be generated in the first global league. What is happening in this arena? Here I look at exports per capita, global exports per global population. So this shows us how the exchange between various economies has been developing. And you see, if we go back 100 years, it was virtually zero, $6. It took then 80 years to bring it up to 400. In the next 20 years, from 1980 to 2000, it more than doubled. And again, in the last 16 years, it again more than doubled. Remember, that's per capita. Of course, the population has also grown. Julian, what was the global population in 1900? Say 1.6 billion.
1.61 billion.
Very good, very good. What is it today? 7.5.
7.5 billion.
Yeah. So in absolute terms, global exports are about 2,000 times larger than they were 100 years ago. This international exchange has grown more than any national economy, even than the Chinese economy. And I expect actually it will go on. There will be setbacks like Trump and Brexit. Why will it go on? Because the exports of emerging countries, of India, of the whole of Africa are still very, very small. German exports to Sweden. Sweden has a population shown of 10 million roughly. German exports to Sweden are bigger than German exports to all of Africa, with 1 billion people. Can you imagine that? And if we do not allow the emerging countries to export to the industrialized world, how could they ever develop? Because they need money, to be able to buy complex, sophisticated products, infrastructure, etc. So I expect that this number will further go up with temporary setbacks from Trump and others. Lesson 1. Globalia is and will be an enormous driver of growth. In 2030, China, the US, and the European Union will be the 3 poles of the global economy. There, one has to be strong. Africa will play an increasing role because the African population will double in the next 30 years from today 1 billion people to over 2 billion. Where they are ending up, that's a different issue. Quite a few will end up in Europe, of course, and also in the UK. Never mind what you do. Now, how successful are individual countries in this global competition? And here I use exports as an indicator because that is the best statistical base we have. And here I show you exports for the 10 years, 2007 till 2016, and you see China is already number 1, clear number 1. For the first time on annual basis, they became number 1 in 2009 when the West was stagnating. China kept growing. Then the US and Germany are about equal, though the US economy is 4 times larger than the German economy, and all the other countries are much weaker. This is even more pronounced if you look at the per capita exports again over 10 years, so this excludes annual fluctuations. And you see here, Germany is an extreme outlier, especially if you compare Germany to the other large European countries, Italy, your country, UK, and France. More than double. Why is that so? Does anybody have an idea?
Strong manufacturing base dominated by the Mittelstand.
That's the keyword, Mittelstand, the mid-sized sector. We come back to that. Yeah. But first, a banal, trivial truth, countries do not export. Mrs. Merkel doesn't export anything. Germany doesn't export. The UK doesn't export. There are a few exceptions with weapons or so, but companies export. Only companies and only strong companies. Companies which are able to sell their products in the international, in the global market. And so if a country is strong in exports, you can conclude that it must have many strong companies who are internationally competitive. And most people think that these are the big guys in the circus, so that large companies explain export performance of a country. Who believes that this hypothesis is right? Where's Paul Squirrel? He's not here, Julian?
He's sorting out...
Yeah, so he will probably come.
Yeah, he'll be later.
So who believes that large companies determine the export performance of a country?
In Russia, yes.
Russia has no exports, only oil and gas. That's
Exactly,
right.
it's
Yeah,
big companies.
yeah. It's actually right. For most countries. I show you here the Fortune Global 500 corporations. These are the largest companies in the world, and the exports. And you see that for most countries, it's an almost linear correlation. Russia is actually here. Yeah. So indeed, for most countries, the number of large corporations explains the export performance. There are 2 exceptions, China and Germany, and these happen to be the most successful, the strongest exporters. So what is the difference? You made the point. The role of the mid-sized sector in export activities. In China, 68% of the exports come from companies with less than 2,000 employees. And in Germany, about 2/3 come from the so-called Mittelstand, the mid-sized sector. And an especially prominent role here, a decisive role is played by these so-called hidden champions. What is a hidden champion? A company which is one of the top 3 in its market in the world, or number 1 on its continent, has a revenue of less than 5 billion euros. Now you say, but 5 billion, that's not exactly what we call mid-sized. You have to see that in globalia relative to the size of the market. The smallest Fortune Global 500 company has a revenue of 25 billion. So I'm talking here of the upper limit of 1/5 of the smallest Global 500. We have to adjust our scale, our perception to what mid-sized means today in the global market. And the third point, not well known in the general public. And I have collected almost by now 3,000 names of these hidden champions, and you see Germany has by far the largest number. Here we have it on a per capita expressed as per million base. For Austria and Switzerland, numbers are similar because they're structurally similar to the German economy. But you see, in all other countries, this sector virtually does not exist. It's much, much smaller. So this is really the explanation for the extreme performance of the German economy in exports. And here, since you are more from the service sector, it's not only manufacturing companies. Here I give you a few examples from service sectors. Kleffmann, global leader in agricultural market research. Boda, the Facebook for hobby sewers, present in 89 countries, published in 18 languages. Germanischer Lloyd, container ship certification, global leader. Inverse, global leader for shared mobility solutions. Flixbus, a new company which is just internationalizing and has already conquered after 3 years 90% of the long-distance market. This market was only liberated in 2014. 15 competitors started, and they have now 90%, and with the exception of 2, the others have thrown in the towel. My own company, and I will share you, weave in some of our own strategy. Simon-Kucher, we are the world leader in giving advice on how to price. We are the world leader in price consulting. We also have digital hidden champions. TeamViewer, who knows TeamViewer? So many hands are up for remote control. Did you think that this is an American company? It's actually from Stuttgart in Germany. Their software is installed on more than 1 billion devices. Frequentes, global leader in secure voice communication. Honorary, digital professional film cameras. Control expert, automatic checking of car insurances claims. A young company which is already in 13 countries. And they point to a common characteristic. Their customers are the insurance companies. And the ways how people cheat with car accidents are the same in all countries. So if you know the tricks, you can internationalize and help the insurance companies to deal with these cheaters. Formal D, information on cars, present in 18 countries. Scope Visio, a new company, kind of SAP for SMEs. So it's not only of the 3,000, about 11%, so I'm talking of 300 to 350 service companies. In globalia, services can be internationalized as product businesses. Lesson 2. Business success in globalia does not primarily depend on large corporations, but on mid-sized, world-class businesses like the hidden champions. It is therefore extremely important to build a mid-sized sector and to create many hidden champions. Now, why are they successful? What can we learn from them? And I see 2 learnings for you. First, for yourself and your company, do we have the potential to internationalize, to globalize? How should we do that? And secondly, for your clients, since I assume that you have many mid-sized clients, can you give them advice? Can you help them in internationalizing, in globalizing. And these are only the most important findings since I don't have much time, but they are really important. The first observation, the hidden champions set extremely ambitious goals for themselves related to growth and to market leadership. These are their two main goals. Couple of examples on growth. Enercon, the technology leader in wind power solution, DAXA logistics company, and Knorr, brakes for trains and trucks. These companies were around 500 million in revenue 20 years ago. Today they are 10 times larger. And that is typical. I mean, you do not expect this growth in the old economy of Germany, but that's typical for the hidden champions. Many are 10 times larger than they were 20 years ago. Here, for smaller hidden champions, Birkenstock is not actually hidden. These special shoes. Rational is the global leader with 55% global market share for professional kitchens, cooking systems, and Argus is actually double global leader in ball bearings made from plastics and in so-called energy chains. And if I said I weave in my own story, that's our growth curve, Simon-Kucher. I was a professor in my first life and we started our company. Kucher was my first doctoral student. In 1985, I came full-time on board in 1995, and we have followed the hidden champion strategy one-to-one in each and every aspect. And you see, that is our growth curve. We have now over 1,000 people and an annual revenue last year of 240 million. And we are a pure service company. We don't have any product. We give advice on pricing as our core competency. A typical statement on market leadership. Chemittal. The goal of Chemittal is the worldwide technology and marketing leadership. Worldwide technology and marketing leadership, nothing less. They were actually bought recently by BASF, the big chemical company. Their revenue is 845 million euros. BASF paid 3.4 billion for this company. 4 times revenue. Can you imagine that? That's almost impossible. You get that only in Silicon Valley. The small company, we want to become and stay number one in the world. To become and stay number one in the world, they provide anatomical teaching systems, 3B Scientific from Hamburg, to become and stay number one in the world, nothing less. Or this even more ambitious, Rosen Group, it is our objective to be the world's most competitive provider. We go far beyond present market requirements. We envision the market's future need. Global leader in pipeline inspection. They have driven General Electric out of the leading position, a giant. This is a startup. Lesson 3, there's no substitute for entrepreneurial ambition. Success always begins with highly ambitious goals. The hidden champions strive for market leadership. To them, as we saw from the quotes, leadership is more than just market share. It's leading the markets. This is the fuel that drives them forward. Of course, this resides in the entrepreneur, in the founder, in the CEO, this energy. How do they go about? And here, the most important aspect is focus. Again, a couple of illustrative quotes. Ullmann. We always had one customer and will only have one customer in the future, the pharmaceutical industry. We only do one thing, but we do it right. Global leader in packaging systems for the pharmaceutical industry. They could, of course, also provide solutions for packaging food or electronic gadgets, but they say, we solely focus on the pharmaceutical industry in order to be the best there. Focus, focus, focus. Or this unbelievable case, Flexi. we only focus on one thing, but we do it better than anyone else. They make only one product, invariance extractable dog leashes. So if you have a dog and walk your dog, you probably know their products because their global market share is 70%. They sell their products in more than 100 countries. Only one thing, but we do it better than anybody else. And this is the ideal product for the Chinese to imitate. And hundreds, if not thousands, of Chinese have tried it and failed. It's actually a very high-tech product. If you think of the spring in your safety belt in the car, you pull it out about 1.50 meters, 5 times a day. If you walk your dog for 1 hour, the dog pulls the line 100 times in an hour, 10 meters, and the spring pulls it back. Their spring never breaks. All the Chinese springs break after 3 months. Here a couple of service company, IP Labs, a leader for digital imaging solutions. Clear focus on digital imaging solution, nothing else. Inverse, I mentioned them, car sharing systems, constant focus and innovation. Simon-Kucher, we focus on pricing, sales, and marketing. We refrain from projects outside this area of competencies. So we are only in this segment of the consulting market. And there in Germany, we are number one. We have been number one for 8 years now against very well-known competitors. And in France, last year in a study, we were number 2. And in the US, only 2 companies are ahead of us. And we started from 0. So it can be done in services as in manufacturing. Lesson 4, only focus leads to world class. If you want to win the gold medal in 100 meters dash and marathon, you will fail in both. Only focus leads to world class. The hidden champions are highly focused on their competencies and their markets. Through deep value chains, they create unique products and protect their know-how. So they're very secretive about research and development, don't let people look into their systems. Now, focus makes a market small. If you sell dog leashes only in Germany, that's a tiny market. How do they make it big? By globalizing. So they combine the focus in product and know-how with global selling and marketing. And they do that through their own subsidiaries. Here's a case of Kärcher, global leader in high-pressure water cleaners. They have now 107 subsidiaries all over the world. And you see they started in the 70s with internationalization. Each year they've added 1 or 2. And I recently talked to their CEO. He is 52 right now, and he said, during my tenure, I want to be in all United Nations countries. So he still has to found about 100 more. Here you also see on the map, they are still not in Africa. Africa is still a white map on the white spot on the global map. This is our global map, Simon-Kucher. We have now 34 offices in 24 countries. We're just opening Hong Kong, but we still are not global. So we have been underway for 32 years now. We started only in 96. So it took some time, but then we started with our second office in the US, in Boston, because we said if we want to become a global consultancy, we have to prove ourselves in the United States and not in Switzerland or Austria. Lesson 5. The hidden champions combine focus in product and know-how with global selling and marketing. Globalization is the growth booster for them. They serve the target markets through their own subsidiaries. They do not do that through distributors or intermediaries or whoever. They do it directly. Innovation and closeness to customer, very important. Hidden champions spend twice as much on R&D as the average firm. The output is, of course, more important, and the hidden champions have 31 patents per 1,000 employees, 5 times more than large patent-intensive corporations. So they are extremely innovative. Even in very modern area, here I have European patents for various countries. Again, per capita expressed at per million inhabitants over 10 years, and you see Germany is very, very strong.
Von Weitem sieht es aus, als hätte es 4
And now I show you
Schornsteine, wie
three
ein Dampfschiff.
innovations from hidden
Doch die
champions.
Entwickler des E-Ship One nutzen eine noch viel ältere Antriebskraft, den Wind. Dieses weltweit einmalige Frachtschiff segelt.
Sicherlich sind das keine gewöhnlichen Segel im herkömmlichen.
You probably haven't seen that ship. It's only being tested under certain secrecy. That's a sail ship. These columns are so-called Flettner rotors, 27 meters high, 4 meters in diameter. And when you kick a football, does it play in a straight line? Why does it make a curve? And there must be a force which pulls the football. That's the same Flettner effect because the ball is rotating. And these columns have 10 to 14 times the efficiency in using the wind power compared to classical sail. So that is a revolutionary if it works in practice, and that's developed by Hermann. The first electric helicopter, that was a maiden flight. It was a year ago by Evolo, but they're still under certification. That takes a couple of years. And now a more recent case.
So you have an airplane that takes off vertically like a helicopter. But once it's in the air, it accelerates into forward flight and flies with wing-borne lift. And this
Developed by Lilium. That was a maiden flight, April 20 this year. So you see that real breakthrough innovations are coming from these small companies. If you look at a very modern sector, autonomous driving, you probably think that Tesla and Google are leading. Since 2010, 2,800 patents have been registered worldwide. 56% come from German companies. And the hidden champions are very strong among them. The biggest strength, though, is not technology, but closeness to customer. They know their customers very well, have intimate relationships. And again, some examples. Hermann, they make engineering systems. Mr. Hermann always said, my market are the top 30 customers in the world, and he had them all. He was a big supplier to Intel and similar companies. He was bought by Tesla a few months ago because Elon Musk says we need this technical competence. So he simply bought the company. IP Labs, we owe our success to close cooperation with the leaders among their customers. Brain Lab, almost all of our employees have the chance for direct customer interaction. Brain Lab is a leader in information for surgery and positioning systems for surgery purposes. The hidden champions deliver top value to their customers. Rosen Group, the pipeline inspection leader, we want to create ultimate value for our customers as a world undisputed leading supplier. Their strategy is value, not price-oriented. Their prices are 10 to 15% above the market. So if you offer superior value, customers are willing to pay you more. And if we look at competitive advantages, horizontally competitive performance, vertically importance from the customer's view, you see upper right box, they do not have only one competitive advantage, but a whole set where they offer superior performance for attributes which are very important for the customer. And it's very interesting to look at the attributes with the biggest increase in importance. It's advice, systems integration, of ease of use. The more complex services and products become, the more important service, systems integration, ease of use becomes. Think of the iPhone. Lesson 6. Innovativeness and closeness to customer are the greatest strengths of the hidden champions. Their strategies are value-oriented, not price-oriented. The hidden champions hold strong competitive positions. Advice, systems integration, and ease of use are new advantages which create higher barriers to entry because they are based on the competencies of your employees. My last point, employees and leaders. What did I observe here? These companies have more work than heads, or expressed in the other direction, they have a little too few people. And I can assure you, if you have a little too few people, that's an extreme driver of productivity. If you have too many people, they kill productivity. High performance culture, high qualification, low turnover. Few numbers on that. The hidden champions have doubled their share of university and college graduates from 9 to 19% in the last 10 years. Global competition is more and more about qualification, less and less about lowest cost alone. If you have qualified employees, it's very important to keep them. Here you see the turnover rate, hidden champions 2.7% per year. Even 1/3 of the average for Germany, and here you see the tragedy of the US, where 1/5 of the workers leaves their employer. And the turnover rate is more important than the sickness rate, because somebody who's sick comes back after a week, somebody who leaves takes with him or her customer relations, know-how, experience, everything. The leaders, they are the ultimate reason. What characterizes them? Unity, identity of person and purpose. Single-mindedness, that's the base for the focus. Stamina and perseverance. As you saw in our example, it takes decades to build a global company, not quarters or a few years. Fearlessness, it's always risky to go into a new market. You have to accept that. And inspiring to others. As St. Augustine said, you must ignite the fire which burns in yourself in others. Picasso can become famous on his own. An entrepreneur needs a team which he has to inspire. The leadership is ambivalent, authoritarian in the principles, participative and flexible in the details. The leaders come young into power, usually in their 30s. Think of the energy and the ambitions. We have more women in top positions than in large companies, and the biggest difference, the continuity. The leaders of the hidden champions remain for 20 years on the average at the helm of their companies. In large corporations, it's just 6 years. You have read these days that General Electric has a new CEO, is 56 years old. So how long is he going to run the company? 6 years. When Jack Welch took over, he was 42. Last lesson, the hidden champions have more work than heads and high-performance cultures. Employee loyalty is high, turnover rates are accordingly low. The hidden champions have strong leaders whose leadership is authoritarian in the principles but flexible in the details. Continuity is very high. And I summarize that in 3 circles. The core is the strong leadership with ambitious goals. The inner strength is innovation, high-performance employees, and depth in the value chain in the knowledge. To the outer world, focus on a narrow market, closeness to customer, clear competitive advantages, and all that with a global orientation. So think about it. It's not a cooking recipe, it's food for thought. And you can also read it in whatever language you prefer. And if you want to follow my ideas, I invite you to do that at Hermann Simon. Thank you very much. And I have Julian for you, the Hidden Champions book, with best wishes, personally and for the champion thenetworkone. And for your colleague, Paul Squirrell, I have my most recent pricing book, Confessions of the Pricing Man. Since you come from the advertising world, you know that this title is at least partially stolen from whom? From David Ogilvy, Confessions of an Advertising Man. I was a little more courageous by saying the pricing man. He said, yeah, Paul, for you also with the dedication. So, Jean, I apologize. it's 1 minute after 12 instead of 12. So we have 5 minutes for questions, answers, comments. And that is very innovative, the ball.
Dr. Simon, forgive me, but I have a slightly mischievous question, and it's partly the way you started about Europe and Brexit, and it's a lot to do with how you've continued. I was reading a book of a well-known friend of Germany, Mr. Yanis Varoufakis, the finance minister of Greece at the time of the crisis. And he broadly puts forward the thesis that the reason that Germany created and manages the EU so successfully is because they started with the strategy to create markets into which they could sell products and services. And I wonder whether you would broadly agree with that, and I wonder whether that's also a lesson for the hidden champions as well, that it's not just about selling to a market, it's about actually creating that market.
Very good point, Julian. I showed you these 3 short videos. You can say these are market creators because they don't replace something which exists. It's breakthrough, and many hidden champions actually created the market, and that's why they are still the market leader. So I could give you dozens, hundreds of examples where they created the market and did not just enter an existing market. I would say we also created. I visited Philip Kotler, the marketing guru, in January 1979. And I was then a professor doing pricing research. He said, I know a guy in Chicago who calls himself a price consultant. I thought, oh, can you be a price consultant? That was a one-man consulting company. I got to know him later on, and that was we created the market for price consulting. That's the best way to become the market leader. Yeah, good point. And then that is, of course, combined with focus, that you are not distracted from this mission or purpose.
Yeah. Hello, my name is Andrew. I'm from Ukraine also. And can you please say a few words about the role of the founder? Do they stay in the company? Do they manage the companies in hands-on style, or they leave? Or thank you.
The founder runs the company in the beginning, and most of the companies were founded when the founder was still quite young. So you have many founders who have been running their companies for 30 or 40 years, not only the average of 20. And of course, the succession problem is the biggest challenge. About 70% of these companies are family companies, family-owned. What we see increasingly is that they hire non-family managers, which is very important because with 30, 50 subsidiaries worldwide, that's getting a complex management job. But the role of the founder and also the role of the CEO is extremely important. And in the beginning, of course, they know every detail. But when they are becoming larger, it's more detached, as I said, authoritarian in the priorities, but flexible, participative in the details of execution of the job, which requires, of course, again, the qualification of the employees. That's high. Do you? Oh, very good, very good. Last question, I hear.
Great, thank you so much. Really interesting. I'm Marcus Serrer from We Communications, and I can't catch a ball, but I'm interested in finding more about pricing. It's something that we always think about at the end of a creative or strategy that we put together for a client. And there's methodologies for measurement, creative, all these things, but pricing isn't spoken about. Is there a methodology for services industry like PR, marketing, advertising for us to follow?
Of course, but it's, again, not a cooking recipe. And that's a topic for another, maybe longer lecture. We do a lot of work in service companies, in media, etc. And let me just give you one little memory bridge. When I'm asked what is the most important aspect of pricing, I have always a very simple answer. That's value or value to customer. because the price you can charge depends on the value the customer perceives. And the Romans were very smart. Did anybody learn Latin here at school? You are too young. But I must admit, I also had forgotten it. You learned Latin. Do you know what the word for price is in Latin? Pretium. And what is the word? Pretium. Like precious, but written with T. What is the word for value? Pretium. The Romans had the same word for price and value. And if you go home and remember that, price equals value, value equals price. This is the fundamental equation of pricing. So we as price consultants, we never look directly at the price, but we look first at the value. Try to understand it. We have to ask customers or use sophisticated methodology. That's, of course, particularly difficult in services. It's more difficult than comparing technical features of a product. But you're absolutely right. You do everything, but you neglect or do not understand the pricing issue. And let me give you one early experience, if you have a minute. I had 20 years ago a complex international tax issue. And I went to a specialist in international tax. It took half an hour and he gave me a very specific advice. A couple of days later, he sent me a bill for 2,000 euros. I called him and said, what is your daily or your hourly rate? We talked about half an hour, and you sent me 2,000 euros. And he said you could have gone to your normal tax accountant. He would have worked 3 or 4 days on the problem, would not have given you the optimal recommendation or optimal solution, and would have charged you 5,000 or 3,000. This guy understood the value part of the equation. And ever since then, when I have a complex international tax issue, I go to this guy. Not with normal tax problem, but only with these special problems. So this is a little story which it requires also courage to charge 2,000 euros for half an hour of advice. Okay, so thank you very much.